Ever heard of a face that fits every crime? A face so perfectly average, so utterly forgettable, that it becomes the perfect disguise? This is the strange and baffling story of the man they called the Everyman. Our story begins in the bustling city of Metropolis in the mid-1990s. A series of daring, high-profile crimes started to plague the city. First, it was a bank, then a jewelry store, and then an art gallery. The crimes were flawlessly executed, leaving behind minimal evidence and baffled investigators. But there was one bizarre clue that connected them all: the eyewitness descriptions of the suspect. From the bank teller, to the gallery security guard, to a passerby on the street, everyone described the same man. He was of average height, average build, with brown hair and brown eyes. He wore nondescript clothing, jeans, a plain jacket, sneakers. His face, well, that's where things got weird. No one could remember it clearly. They'd say things like, "He just looked like a guy," or "I saw him, but I can't picture his face now." It was as if his features were made of smoke, dissolving from memory the moment you looked away. The police sketch artist, a veteran named Frank, was driven to the brink of frustration. He sat with witness after witness, his charcoal pencil poised, but the result was always the same. He'd draw a face, and the witness would say, "Yeah, that's close, I guess," but without any conviction. Frank ended up with a dozen sketches that all looked vaguely similar but were ultimately generic, like a default character in a video game. He nicknamed the phantom suspect the Everyman. Detective Miles Corbin was assigned the case. Corbin was a sharp, no-nonsense cop who believed every puzzle had a solution. He dismissed the forgettable face theory as witness hysteria. "People are bad with faces, especially under stress," he'd grumble to his partner. "We're looking for a master of disguise, someone using subtle prosthetics, makeup. That's the only logical explanation." Corbin and his team spent months chasing shadows. They investigated professional actors, makeup artists, and known disguise experts. They pored over security footage, which was grainy back then, but it always showed the same thing: a man whose face seemed to blur and shift, never offering a clear shot. The Everyman was always one step ahead. He'd hit a new target, leaving behind the same frustrating lack of clues and a fresh batch of witnesses who couldn't remember his face. The media had a field day. Headlines screamed, "The Phantom of Metropolis," and "Catch the Faceless Ghost." The public was both terrified and fascinated. Who was this man who could walk in plain sight and remain invisible? The breakthrough, when it finally came, wasn't from a high-tech lab or a dramatic shootout. It came from an old, forgotten piece of evidence from the very first robbery. A single, partial fingerprint left on a doorknob that was initially dismissed as too smudged to be useful. With advancements in forensic technology, a junior technician decided to run it through a new experimental database, one that linked to non-criminal records like public service, employment. And they got a hit. The print belonged to a man named Arthur Penelgon. Detective Corbin's team pulled up his file, and they all stared in disbelief. Arthur Penelgon was not a master criminal. He was a clerk at the city's records archive. A quiet, unassuming man who had worked the same desk job for 20 years. His employee ID photo showed a face so profoundly average it was almost comical. It was the face from the sketches. It was the Everyman. Corbin and his team stormed the records archive, expecting a confrontation. Instead, they found Arthur at his desk, diligently stamping documents. He didn't run. He didn't fight. When Corbin showed him the badge, Arthur just looked up with a sigh, as if he'd been expecting them. "It's about time," he said softly. The interrogation was even more surreal. Arthur confessed to everything, describing each crime in meticulous detail. But he had no grand motive, no desire for wealth or fame. He explained that his whole life he had been overlooked. People forgot his name seconds after he said it. Colleagues he'd worked with for years would walk past him without a nod of recognition. He was, in his own words, a ghost in the machine. One day, out of a desperate need to feel seen, to prove he existed, he decided to commit a crime. He thought getting caught would finally make people notice him, but it didn't work. Even as a criminal, he remained invisible. He'd walk right past police officers, make eye contact with witnesses, and still, no one could remember him. The more he tried to be seen, the more he blended in. His forgettable face wasn't a disguise. It was a natural, bizarre curse. He had no accomplices, no special training. His superpower was his complete and utter averageness. He simply walked into places, and people's brains registered him as part of the background, like a piece of furniture. He was able to commit these incredible heists because he was hiding in plain sight. The trial was a media circus. The prosecution had a full confession, but they struggled to make the jury see Arthur as a criminal mastermind. He just sat there, looking like anyone's boring uncle. In the end, he was convicted, but the story of the Everyman left a strange legacy in Metropolis. It made people look a little closer at the faces in the crowd. It was a chilling reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things are hidden behind the most ordinary exteriors. And it posed a question we still can't quite answer. How many others are out there, living their lives, completely unseen? Look around. You never know who you might not be seeing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.